Welcome back to the channel, Stories with Mrs. Aldridge. I know, I'm silly. Well, do you like Valentine's Day? Yeah? Well, this one is probably one of my favorite stories. This is Gilbert, and it is called Roses Are Pink and Your Feet Really Stink. Written by Diane de Groat. That's a good one, you guys. Oh. There they were. 15 blank cards waiting to be filled out with nice Valentine poems. They were sitting on the kitchen table in a pile as high as Gilbert's nose. Mrs. Bird had told them they were to write something nice for each of their classmates because Valentine's Day was about liking each other. Gilbert liked Patty a lot. She had smiley eyes and a silly laugh that made Gilbert smile silly too. He picked out the biggest card for her and wrote inside, "Roses are red, violets are blue. Your eyes are nice, and I like you, Gilbert." Gilbert also liked Frank. Frank let Gilbert use his baseball mitt. Once he forgot to bring his own, and on Frank's card he wrote, "Your name is Frank, it isn't Hank. You lent me your mitt, so I will thank Gilbert." This is fun, Gilbert thought. He continued to write Valentine poems that were nice, but there were 2 cards left, one for Louis and one for Margaret. Gilbert didn't want to write a nice poem for Louis. Louis once tweaked Gilbert's nose until it turned red. That means like squeezed it. And he didn't want to write a nice poem for Margaret either because Margaret made fun of his glasses. So he didn't write nice poems to them. On Louis's card, he wrote, "Violets are blue, roses are pink, your feet are big and they really stink." Was that nice? Gilbert thought the poem was funny, but maybe Louis wouldn't think so. Maybe he would tweak Gilbert's nose when he read it. Gilbert didn't want Louis to tweak his nose again, so he didn't sign from Gilbert. He signed it Margaret. And on Margaret's card, he wrote, "Roses are red, you wet your bed. I think you have rocks in your head." That is not nice. Gilbert liked the poem, but he didn't think Margaret would like it. He didn't want Margaret to say mean things to him again, so he signed this card from Louis. Whoa, that is not nice. And on Valentine's Day, Gilbert walked into school with 15 cards, a tin of Valentine cookies that his mother had baked for the party. Miss Bird let everybody open their cards, and one of Gilbert's cards had X's all over the envelope. So he opened it first. "Roses are red, violets are blue. You are my friend, I like you." And it was signed Patty. Gilbert smiled back at Patty. Aww. Patty's his friend who he really likes. Then Gilbert opened the rest of his cards. They were all very friendly, even the one Louis had written for him. The poem said, "You may be small, you're not very tall, but I like the way that you play ball, Louis." Wow, that was nice of Louis, wasn't it? But Gilbert didn't write a nice one to Louis. And Gilbert was happy that Louis liked the way that he played ball. And then Margaret, the other one, he wrote a bad one too. Margaret wrote, "Sometimes you're very sweet. I hope you brought nice cookies to eat. Love, Margaret." Gilbert smiled to himself. Margaret thought he was very sweet. He looked over at her. But she wasn't happy reading one of her Valentines. Whose Valentine do you think that is? She stuck her tongue out at Louis, and Louis wasn't very happy with one of his that he was reading either. He stuck his tongue out at Margaret. Margaret pushed Louis, and Louis called Margaret a bad name. Mrs. Bird, the teacher, "Quiet, please, quiet. Valentine's Day is about liking each other, not fighting." She made the whole class do workbooks for the rest of the morning. Everyone was mad at Louis and Margaret, even Gilbert. When it was reading time, Margaret looked through all her Valentines and said, "I have 2 Valentines from Louis, a good one and a bad one." Louis said, "I didn't write a bad one to you. Someone else wrote my name." Then he looked through his own pile and said, "I have 2 Valentines from Margaret and none from Gilbert." Oh no, Gilbert wrote the bad cards and signed our names to it. Mrs. Bird again said, quiet down, please. So they figured out that Gilbert did it. At lunch, nobody wanted to play with Gilbert, not even Patty, his best friend. He had to sit all by himself, and when he peeked over his carrot banana sandwich, he could see Patty and Louis giggling together at the table. Gilbert wondered if Louis thought Patty had smiley eyes and a silly laugh, too. Look at him sit all by himself. Margaret loved eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and Gilbert liked peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, too, and he wished that he was eating one with her. Well, maybe he shouldn't have done something bad, huh? And at recess, nobody played with Gilbert. Oh, he was very sorry that he had done that. When they all lined up to go inside, Patty finally asked, why did you write those bad things about your friends, Gilbert? Because Louis tweaks my nose and Margaret always makes fun of my glasses. Louis said, I'm sorry I tweaked your nose, Gilbert. You can tweak mine if you want. So Gilbert gave Louis his nose a little tweak, but it didn't turn red. And then Margaret said, I'm sorry I made fun of your glasses, Gilbert. You can wear mine for the rest of the day. And she put on Gilbert's glasses. But she couldn't see anything, so she decided to give them back. In art class, Gilbert made 2 new valentines out of red paper. And they said, violets are blue, roses are pink. I'm sorry that I said that your feet really stink. That was to Louis. And then he thought of something nice to say about Margaret. Roses are red, jelly is sweet. You smell as good as the sandwich you eat. And then in math, Gilbert figured out that he had 364 days before he would have to write more valentines again. And finally, it was time for the party. Gilbert gave the new cards to Louis and Margaret, and he passed out the cookies that his mother had baked. And each cookie said, Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you liked that one. It's a funny one, and it teaches you a lesson, too, of being kind to others. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Don't forget, go subscribe to my channel so you get the ding notification when I upload a new story. Bye, guys.